on this computer. There you go. You might have to say yes to it. They now are making you say yes.
Continue.
Yeah, or to continue. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So, was this a better thing for everybody to read?
Shorter, wasn't it?
It was shorter.
Did any of you know or had heard before on Diana Butler Bass? She writes a blog. So if you're interested in that, what Dana sent you, you can subscribe to the blog. It's free. She's an inspirational, motivational speaker. She's a Christian. And she actually was a speaker for the Bishop's Convocation several years ago, which is where I first heard her. And she brings not only a sense of biblical truth, biblical faith, but also the conditions of the world into that. So she makes for some really interesting reading, and she has some really good books.
Yeah, this is one of them.
Yeah.
Grounded.
That one I think is based in gratitude. Is that the one that's based in gratitude, or
Finding? I have not read it because I bought it before school started. Finding God, but somebody told me to get this. Maybe it was you. I don't know.
Yeah, it may have been.
Finding God in the World, a spiritual revolution. So that's one. I think I started it. I think I started this. So, but she's written, yeah. And she graduated from Duke. She has a PhD. So, yay. Go Blue Devils. Isn't it weird that? Anyway.
So did you just want to start with the questions, Dana, or just with
Yeah.
any comments that, or anything that spoke to someone in the discussion? I mean, in the paper.
Yeah, I think we should just open it up. I thought the questions, there's 5 questions at the end. I really thought they were very reflective and interesting, but maybe we should just also say if anybody has any questions about what was written that you didn't feel was addressed. Paul?
I think she's right on. And I think churches are missing an opportunity.
Like what kind? So speak more of, like, what do you mean? What kind of, what opportunities are they missing? Make a list.
I think the major theme is disconnection and dislocation.
Disconnection.
And dislocation. And after, I think especially for those of us maybe living alone, and with preconditions that caused us to be a lot more careful, a lot more sheltering in place, it's kind of hard to get back and connect. I've been to church a couple of times and it's felt kind of strange, actually. And I think there are a lot of people that are in that. Some are going to show the symptoms of this dislocation and disconnection more, and some are going to show a lot less but still be affected by it. So I think it's really an important topic.
Yeah, we agree. Susan?
I agree. If you're isolated, it's not helpful. But I also see the other side to that, where we're reaching out to people that we would not otherwise get, who can't maybe come to church. It's opened up a whole new avenue. It's nice to be able to go to church or to see what the message is when you're not in town. I mean, there's a lot of positives to staying connected in that way. And to me, I appreciate that. I also, we're back at church with masks on. We all go outside and take them off. So, I don't know if that matters or and we're limited because there are a lot of people that aren't coming back for the reasons Paul was talking about. So I see both sides of it. So I think
I think
Eleanor? Wait, hold on, Paul.
Okay.
Eleanor?
Well, I was just going to say the same thing that Susan was pretty much saying, is that I actually think that, well, our church and a lot of churches, have been doing a pretty good job of outreach and having the small groups which is helping people to connect, and phone calls, and you know, the online services have enabled me to, you know, go to my, well, United Methodist Church, and also go to my home church where I grew up at, you know, on Sundays. I get to go there and see them too. So it has enabled me to be able to do a little bit more connecting. But I do believe that churches do need to pay attention to how people are connecting, you know, because there's a lot of, I don't want to say older people, but, you know, like my mother, you know, she was not going to get on the computer and watch church on
Right.
the screen, you know, so
Right.
it, you know, but the phone calls really help. I think the phone calls and other people in the church reaching out keep her involved. So
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, and very early on, Diana Butler Bass talks about grief and lament, is in a way I've lost, and I think a lot of other people may have lost, a simple trust in the world as a safe place.
Hold on.
And that reconnection is going to take some time. So having, as Ellen was saying, having groups that talk together about this, I think is really important. And that's why I think we're missing if we just come back and everything's normal. I don't think deep down that it is normal yet.
What did people think about the way, if you remember, she was defining loss in different ways? I thought that was quite creative. She says, Faith, I muted you because we were listening to you talk. So she said, lost doesn't just refer to what is gone. It also means that which is mislaid, out of place, dislocated. And Paul said dislocated. Sometimes lost just means that we're lost. And that is the other task for the post-pandemic world, to help others find what has been lost, to point the way beyond the thicket. We need to find ourselves again. We need to relocate in the world. How do we do that? All right, I see your hand, Paul, but I just want to give some space to make sure everybody else has some time. All right, Carol, go ahead. We'll give you time. Just
Well, Eleanor made the comment about, you know, those who maybe are not into computers and such, so that have not been able to benefit from that way of connecting with one another. And maybe that's something that we should think about in terms of, are there folks that we know that maybe don't have computer, don't have internet, are not used to getting email or getting on Zoom, and maybe we could work on that and help people in that respect, just because we have found how, I know that really was my lifeline during the time I was, and I, you know, am so happy that I was used to using computers, so it wasn't a big leap for me. But for those who haven't been in that world of work, you know, before all of this, so you know, maybe we should think about trying to help people out in that respect.
Yeah, it's good. Willeen?
Yes, I'm probably one of the oldest ones in this group, and Tom and I did really well, and we stayed connected all during this year, and we walked with friends, but I feel a real sadness, because I feel, because of my age, I really lost a year. Now that we're getting back, my body aches more. And I that whole year without really connecting with people, it is a real sadness to me, and I grieve for the friends that we've lost because they've died or they moved away. And it is going to, I don't believe there'll ever be, it will never be like it was. And so I need help in realizing that. And this is a new beginning for us. And we need preaching and teaching to help us realize it's a new beginning and we have lots of opportunities. What are we going to do?
Well, it's so well said. Go ahead, Faith.
Well, the paragraph you were talking to about lost, and I think that is critical, the distinction between loss and lost. And it kind of goes along with what Wileen is saying. We have lost some things. And now is the time to figure out whether we should spend energy trying to get them back, or whether we should find new ways and new beginnings, because I think we can spend a lot of energy and sadness and grief trying to recreate, especially as the church, trying to recreate what was,
Right.
but it's gone.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't anything there.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we are now worse off
No.
than we were. And I think, Wileen, you're absolutely correct that the church has got to address the issue. We talked about that in the conversation yesterday. We spent 16 months trying to convince congregations that community existed online, that this is real, what we have here, okay? And now we seem to try and be finding a lot of energy to tell you that that really wasn't real, and you need to come back into church, because that's the only place you find real community. And so I think that what she offers us in terms of this is a time to name the loss, to name where we are lost, and then to figure out what's worth reclaiming and what's worth burying, if you will, and grieving it, but burying it.
Yeah, and it's funny. So being in school, everything we think about, it's like, okay, what does this, where biblically do we connect to this? Like, where does this come back to? And everything that I'm hearing from what Wileen said to Faith, it's the salvation story. It's the story of it's the biblical story from the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, all the way to the resurrection of Christ. Whether it's the Israelites coming out of slavery in Egypt into an unknown land, trusting that something new will be created. They can't go back to where they were. They have to know what they know and move into that new space, that unknown space. And it's the same story when we talk about Jesus in Jesus's life, and then the death, and then we come to the resurrection. And the disciples, here they are. They have no, I think of that one time, the time when they're like, Jesus is dead. The Holy Spirit hasn't come to them, and they're just sitting there like, what the heck am I going to do? And something new comes, and they have to try. And that's exactly what Wileen's saying. You're preaching salvation. Not that I'm getting to, but I just heard it anyway. Oh, Dad, you've got something to offer. Here we go. All right. Sorry, I'll come to Jewel, Susan, and Paul. I'm picking preferences here. No, I'm just kidding.
I think COVID has also highlighted the differences within the congregation over a number of different issues, which I won't get into, and has caused some anxiety within the congregation. So we talked to a minister that we're very close with down in Hopewell, Pennsylvania, and what we're thinking is having a relaunch of our church. So we would sit down as a congregation, hopefully a large number of them, and come up as to how we're going to relaunch our church and what does our future look like as a church? And where are we going to go philosophically, with theory, doctrine, and so forth like that, to see what we can mesh with, and if there is a meshing. So we want to have a relaunch, and we have invested a large quantity of money in refurbishing our fellowship hall during COVID. And we have, much like other churches, have seen a decline in not only online attendance, but also decline in church attendance.
Yeah.
And so I think a number of us, but as I said, this minister, Amy Banka, believes that to sit down with the congregation and map out the future and relaunch our church is what we need in many different directions.
I like that. Okay. So I got Paul and Susan, and then I'll go to Ruth and Carol because Paul had his hand up, and then Susan. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so this brings to mind sanctuary, a place of safety, a place of support. And that's what the church needs to be now.
Susan?
Well, I was an Air Force brat, so there was moving every 3 years. And I think it helped a lot in my flexibility and learning, but there was a lot of loss. You'd make a friend and they'd either move or you would move. And we were in Europe, and Dad wanted to see more of Europe. So after a year in England, we had a great house. We were living in the countryside. We moved to France, and we all just wanted to strangle him because we were so having such a good time in this house we had in the village and all this room to play. And anyway, so, things were out of our control. So we had to learn how to adapt and move forward. And if I lamented about the past, it didn't change it, is the way I looked at it. I just had to kind of go forward. And there were 5 kids. So one of my brothers was not good with that, but the rest of us just kind of rolled with the punches. And I think in my life that served me well over the course of time. Doesn't mean I liked it. Doesn't mean it was always positive, but I think, the graciousness of God got me through, and that's just the outlook that I ended up taking.
Thank you. Ruth, and then Carol.
Is Ruth?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Ruth Ketchum. Yes, Ruth K.
So Susan, I can relate to what you're saying. I'm a PK from back in the day when we moved every 5 years. So yeah, I've lived with a sense of loss my entire life in that way. And so I can relate to what you're saying in terms of flexibility and looking forward as well. But so I want to ask you, how do you make community now, as in your life now? And related to COVID also, how do you make community? How do you do it? Because I think COVID, it's been interesting to see how we made community during the pandemic, and now we have an opportunity to create new community as well, or to build on that. So, so what do you do?
Well, we were lucky here because we have so much outdoor space that we stayed connected. I have a group and we all played. Everybody, it was the same group of people. We all were vaccinated. We all stayed together. And out of that were some of my church friends too. So we went to each other's houses for dinner. And we did it that way. Maybe we were a little bit more forward thinking and thinking in doing that. But we have just a lovely outdoor here and so much to move that saved us, I think. Yeah. It would have been much harder had I been in San Diego. Although San Diego, you've got warm weather, you can be outside, you can go to the beach. So that would be my saving grace there.
Yeah, I think the challenges are if you are homebound and or live in a place like in Pennsylvania, there's months where you can't be really outside because of the weather. Carol?
This wasn't what I was going to say, but just listening to the other folks, I just was thinking about the fact that a couple of days ago, I had sent an email to someone that I had considered very close, and apologized because had not been in contact for nearly a year and a half. And I just felt so bad about that. And you mentioned that I hoped we weren't going to lose the friendship just because of that lapse, and was so pleased to immediately get a response, no, complete understanding. And of course we were going to reconnect and all of this. And it warmed my heart so much to get that response. And, but what I had originally raised my hand to talk about was Diana's discussion about the word religion and how it had the two different meanings, one being order, which I sort of translated to meaning our old way of being concerned with liturgy and all of the normal things that we think about when we go and have a church service. And then she took the other meaning of reconnection. And I think that's where we have to go now, is that kind of reconnection. And maybe it's going to take a real different path than what we've been used to.
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to this conversation in my current context, being that I would say, Faith, I don't know if you, but like coming out of being in seminary, I don't think the coursework in seminary has quite, like they still don't know what to do with the COVID post-pandemic worship experience, because I have like an intro to worship class right now, and we are trying to think about what does worship look like, and it's complicated. Like no one knows. But yet the professor is trying to teach us what worship looked like, because we've got, thousands of years of what worship looked like. So it's interesting to think about as a student of theology and religion. Mandy, go ahead.
Thank you. This is all such amazing points. I was thinking, I'm a Baha'i, which is also a form of Christianity, but we believe in all the religions. And so we don't have a church to begin with. So, we meet in the parks, we do. And so I think we've lost some of our older folks, so then we started doing everything on Zoom because unity, inclusiveness is the big thing. But so now we're so excited to get back out in the parks. And now this Delta thing's coming, and even hearing, that your husband got COVID, it's not even so much as COVID as the fear I feel. You turn on the news and there is, people are already canceling. And so here we are planning all these things in 2 weeks. And now people that we wanted to participate are already saying, could I read the prayer on Zoom, in the park? And I'm thinking, so the hybrid thing, I'm just so curious, has anybody tried this? Our interfaith is going to try doing this. And it makes sense when you're in the church, because people could be in the pew, you guys could speak, but has somebody tried it in other venues, or how is this going to be? I think this might be part of our answer going forward for all of us, because you make all these friendships and some people are in Japan, but how do you include them, right?
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point, and I think people are trying to figure it out. Go ahead, Ruth.
Hey, Mandy, do you know my friend Sandy Coleman? Okay, she's Baha'i, she's a friend of mine. Okay, so yeah, I love the outdoor worship that Sandy Guido had. That was beautiful. And speaking of seminary, I'm taking a class, and I took a class at Claremont that was hybrid in a way of having some people on Zoom and some people, And so it's really interesting. It's difficult to do, but it's definitely possible. And I think that it's necessary, because there's going to be some people that can be there and some people that can't, physically and not physically. So if we could do that, that's a remarkable way of having a web of community in in a new way. So it's, yeah, I think you're right. I think that we really have to look at being able to do that. It's pretty cool.
That's interesting because, oh, go ahead, Randa. Go ahead, Randa. I think you stepped in. Yeah,
Okay.
you go. Yep, you're good.
Well, I've been reluctant to come back to church in person. And so I continued watching worship online in my pajamas with my coffee, and I like that. But I have a friend who tried to make me feel guilty about that, and thinking, that I need to get back to the sanctuary, and so I didn't really appreciate that because I'm not ready,
And
Good for you,
I
Randa.
I think that's the problem. I think a critical discussion for the church is, what do we mean by community? What is community? Because all of us, we fall into the trap that community means me with you in the same place. And I think we have to redefine that. And we have to redefine worship. And part of what concerns me, and it's always concerned me in seminary education, is that it's not really connected to the life in the church and where people are really struggling and the kind of issues that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And somehow we have to increase that dialogue between the academic and the world.
Well, and that's the question I have. I have a question of what's community and what's worship, because I will say, coming out of I'm in a worship class right now. And the whole point is, how do you create worship? And the first step is, what is worship? And worship is, and Faith and I have talked about this, but it is a core component is you're in dialogue with God. But God is like, you're glorifying God in that space. So you're worshiping God and you're in dialogue with God. So you're
each other.
And so that's interesting because, well, and each other.
Worship is not one way.
No, you're right. It's not one way. But if you think about, and I'm kind of getting a little bit, but we're like the fourfold order of worship. And if you go back and look at your worship order, how we do it is, you have the gathering, you come in to the space, whatever that space is, virtual, physical, you have the word. So you're hearing from God. Are you hearing from God? Then you have your response to God. What's your response? Now, I guess that could be your individual response, and it could be your when we celebrate communion, that's a community response to God, right?
Yeah, but you just made my point.
So that's
because as you went through all four, they are totally interconnected. We're always moving between what we're addressing to God and what we're addressing to one another. And so you don't have worship just one way.
No, but
even if you're doing it on your own and then God says, now go pick up the phone and call your brother or sister.
Well, and that's the sending, right? What are you going to go do in the world, right? The sending is the end of it, which is, okay, now what's your response to the world? Okay, so if that's worship, so is community a component of worship, or are they separate?
No.
I'm just asking. I don't know.
The key word is collective, and you said it when you were talking about the third point of worship. You said collective, and that's the key word right there.
That's community.
I think there has been a failure, which is now being rectified, in focusing on, as Faith was saying, the vertical, and kind of devaluing the horizontal. Said another way, being very focused on the spiritual and not on the world. I've been reading Meditations from Richard Rohr, and he is so spot on that we have been taught early on to be focused in our relationship with God and with Jesus. And then we sort of do these mission things, and that's sort of part of it, whatever. But there's this underlying thing that we should be more and more connected together over time. And what the pandemic has done is to push us apart somewhat and force us into this virtual space. So we have to come back out of that, and we need that connection, but we need to be both in the world and in God.
Go ahead, Carol.
Well, I think we can get the connection even virtually. I don't think we have to be in actual community of being at the congregation. I feel very connected to all of you.
I agree with that, Carol, very much. And Willene?
Well, there are different vibrations, so.
I love that word. That's great. That's right. There are different energies.
Our knitting group, we have a knitting group at our church. And as soon as all of us had our second vaccination, 2 weeks past the second vaccination, I've been having the women here once a month. And I just had them Monday. There were 9 of us. And when, we just had such a good time visiting, maybe more visiting than knitting. But we each shared a little bit. I made sure that everyone had a chance to share something. And when one of them told about the health problems of their daughter-in-law, for the first time, I said, let's pray. I never would have done that before, but I said, okay, let's pray right away.
Amen.
For this person. And so we did. And when they left, I just had different feelings, vibrations, that I love this group too, but it's not quite the same as I felt that day when they left. I just felt, just really good.
I will share. So I was going back to the hybrid. So pivoting off of what Willene is sharing and then connecting to Ruth. So I'm in this seminary program at Duke, which is obviously a hybrid because I'm in Southern California and Duke is in North Carolina, right? And I'm not in North Carolina. But the way our hybrid program is, and I will tell you, in the last year, we have all been virtual. Everything has been done virtually. And we have a spiritual formation group that meets every single Wednesday, every single Thursday. And we have created an amazing online virtual community. However, I'll caveat, we have our first opportunity now to meet in person. We all have to be vaccinated. We have to submit. Duke requires everybody to be vaccinated before they can return. And we go for our intensive resident week, August 21st to the 28th. And I have a woman, the women in my cohort, we have a group me. So we're always messaging each other and praying for each other. But they're like, we cannot wait to see one another and just be in each other's so I hear what Willene is saying, because there's a different energy. Like, we've created this beautiful online group. We have, it's awesome, but we are so excited to physically be in each other's presence. And so I get that. I don't know what to do with it, but go ahead.
Well, part of the thing is different doesn't mean better. And that's the judgment that we make, to say, I have different energies, are different, and I derive great joy from this, but I also derive great joy from this. And I think the danger is when we start saying, but therefore, because this is different, this is better, rather than simply receiving the two experiences and saying, I love being in the virtual community. And it was a foundation for many things that might not have happened otherwise. But I also love this. And it feeds me in a different way. But then we go back and we start saying to Randa, this is the better. So you have to choose this. Do you
Yeah,
see
and
what I'm saying?
I do. And
We
Ruth
can
said you can,
celebrate both.
and
Right,
first
but
off, I don't,
do you want to upgrade to Wi-Fi?
And Ruth said you can have both, and I 100% agree. And I 100% agree we should never say good or bad, because I think everything just is. And it's doesn't help us as humans to place how, but I do think that there is, I don't know, there is something about being able to hug somebody or hold somebody's hand.
If you're a hugger.
But even if you're not a hugger, but just to hold somebody's hand, like I'm not or to touch somebody's shoulder, that I can't get, okay, this is going to sound crazy and maybe you haven't seen it, but there's a movie, Kim, you probably haven't seen this movie because it's probably not in your genre, but it's, somebody, maybe Dad can help me. It's with Joaquin Phoenix, and he is in love with the computer. Is it called She? Yeah. And he has a relationship with the computer, but they finally get to a point where they want to consummate their relationship. And he has to get a physical person, or the computer. You can't consummate anyway, I digress. But
yes, because I'm not trying to marry the people in my group.
No, but the point is,
I don't want a physical relationship with them.
No, but there's a physical. See, I go all over the map here. Mandy, if you have not been with this group, just welcome and buckle in, okay? No, but my point is there's a physicalness to, and I get, you're right. Like maybe you're not a hugger, but just to hold somebody's hand. I don't know. Come on. All right, Susan, you got your hand up. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Anybody know what I'm saying?
Yes, there's something called healing touch. And
healing touch.
Yeah. And you don't always lay hands on people, and they do it in the hospital a lot of times. But I agree with you that the physicalness of touching each other is something that we miss. But I think we're also so analytical about everything that we have to equate it. And it's like everybody comes to God in their own way. Why would somebody judge you for choosing to be at home if you're comfortable with that and not choosing to go to church? And that's not what we're about as Christians either. We welcome everyone. We welcome all people from everywhere. That's what God is. That's what Jesus did. So I find that interesting. Amen. That judgment is in there in that way.
Ruth, go ahead.
Yeah, right. Susan, I agree with you on that completely, but the church is an institution. It still is an institution. And the way we have to look at how the church counts its success. And if it counts its success in that you have a whole bunch of people in a building on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, if that's your measure of success, then that's going to be your focus. So we have to look at, is that how we're saying, oh, this church is succeeding? People show up in church.
Hey, yep. I agree with that one. Paul? Oh, look, she's got deer in her yard. She's showing us.
Cool.
They're like, hi, welcome to study.
Mandy, she's in Reno.
Oh yeah, Mandy, she's in Reno. She's in Reno, Nevada.
See the amazingness? I get to meet all you. That's a perfect example. Yeah. I'm so blessed.
Sorry, I couldn't let that go by.
No, absolutely.
So, I think one of the reasons people hate masks is that they can't see the mouth. And one of the problems with Zoom is you don't see the whole body. There's a whole thing about body language that is so necessary to us. So necessary. And without it, I think we're starved a little bit. So, and I wanted to say one more thing, and that is this group is part of the recovery. It really is. And what's going on today is so important. Thank you.
All right, who else? What else do we have? Carol, go ahead, and then Ray.
Well, getting back to the reading that you had, I just found her talking about the different aspects of time to be very interesting, in that my experience with COVID and the isolation has been with my whole different feeling about time. And it became compressed, it became expanded. It was so different during this period that if you asked me when something had occurred, I couldn't begin to tell you whether it was a week or a month. It was just the most unique experience that I've ever had with my feelings about time. And so when she went on to talk about the fact that for God, there is no past or future, and it just made me realize that we just have to deal with the here and now. And that kind of brought me up short in terms of what I had been experiencing during this period.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. Ray, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of points about the article in general. And one, I think in one sense, it was a little bit overdone. All of it, much of it is just kind of self-evident, lost and losing and all of that. And it does, at an individual level, you know, we've all been through our individual totally separate experiences, and yeah, we enjoy this group and we've been part of it, and you know, as a small group in a virtual world. You know, Paul has concerns about pre-existing conditions, and I can sympathize with that, empathize with it a little bit maybe, and respect it. But you know, personally, I haven't had that experience, and you know, I haven't known anybody that I know of anyway who's died of COVID, or you know, been close to anybody who's been sick with it. So at a personal level, and I'm kind of used to being alone, so I can occupy my time. At the same time, then, you know, I find in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to go to actual events with people. Had a big one yesterday with about 300 people that, and we were just absolutely thrilled to see each other. And it wasn't just me. I could tell the joy in their faces as we greeted each other after having 16 months apart, and, you know, not being in small groups or virtual groups. And that's a connection with the corporate level. You know, and his dad mentioned a relaunching, and you know, Faith and Dana have talked about, you know, the church and how it's going to continue, and you know, the importance of all of that. And you know, I'm connected with that too, because due to COVID, they in a group, a charitable organization dealing with veterans and families and you know, their needs and stuff like that. I've been kind of many years currently, maybe thought of myself, or other people thought of me anyway, as the older statesman group, but because of the circumstances, all of a sudden now I'm put in charge of a pretty important project. And so at the corporate level, you know, I understand that you know, the decisions that the church has been making are the same kind of decisions that we're making now as an organization, and we've got all of that going on. And each of us individually, you know, I really appreciate what Susan said about being adaptable, and Ruth about, you know, growing up in an environment, because in the military environment, my kids say the same thing. You know, if we had moved every 3 years and lost friends and gained new ones, their life would be totally different now, and their personalities and their ability to adjust and get things done and survive it. And, you know, whether it's faith in God or just, you know, the faith in their own ability to adapt and adjust. But on the grand scheme of things, to me, it's all pretty insignificant. And I don't think the author, you know, probably wasn't her intention, but I don't think she touched on the rest of the world and what's going on, and the tragedy, the huge, incredible, absolute, you know, heartbreaking tragedy that's occurring, you know, families and whole societies and whole cultures, and maybe the Christian church, is a part of that angst that the rest of the world is feeling. And to me, that's really the important part of what the pandemic has brought. We have to deal with going forward, and individually, I can say that this particular group, I think you're all going to be fine. And I think San Vito United Methodist Church is going to be fine, and we'll all do our best in our various organizations and individual lives to go forward and be successful with what we're trying to do and the adjustments going forward. But the rest of the world is in just such incredible turmoil right now that if we're going to pray for something, that's what we pray for. That's all I had.
Also our country.
Yeah.
And
I think it's not.
She has a whole, many of her other books touch on exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
She is not insular. I mean, this article, yes, she was addressing it on a very personal level, but she is very much aware of global connections. And when she takes some of the passages, she interprets them economically, globally, economically in some of her books. So you're right, this one was very, but if you read some of her other work, she'd be talking about what you're talking about.
And I don't think it goes back. I don't think it's binary. I don't think it's either or, like either you, or it's both, right? It's both. And I think that's, you're both. I personally, have to lament, right? I mean, that's why you have the Psalms. The Psalms are all lament for yourself, for the community, for the nation. And then you also have to lament and grieve for the outside world that, is suffering at a different level or a different. So I think it's both. I think I personally caution myself from not addressing my own grief, because then I don't know if I can really be fully present for others. And so for me, I also want to reflect on where in my life am I struggling, grieving, and whether it's I don't want to beat myself up because I think it's insignificant or it's not as important, because I absolutely have. I'm like, why should I complain? I certainly saw them. Why should my kids complain? Their life is awesome. Look we have good friends that live in India. It's a train wreck. It's a complete train wreck. And I hear the stories over there, but I still can't turn away from, I don't want to make myself feel like a horrible person if I feel bad because, you know what I mean? I feel sad about something, so I think you have to, it's holding both of those things in tension. Go ahead, Susan.
It's all degrees.
Right.
It's all degrees. Everybody's got their own set of joys, sorrows, we all have different experiences. But I think the most important thing is that we don't just dwell on that. We're more empathetic towards our neighbors and our friends and people that are going through things. And like Ray said, the world and the state the world's in. You just have to try to do a day at a time and be as thoughtful and kind as you can be.
Yeah, that's all you can. I do want to be mindful that it's 11:03, and so we are at a time boundary, and so if folks need to sign off, they're more than welcome to do that, obviously, and go in peace and go in grace. But we can also continue to have a conversation for a little bit. But it is 11:03. Are you want to talk, Mandy? Okay. Are you saying goodbye?
I'm saying no. I'm staying. I wanted to say that just feeling the warmth though of everybody. I'm in my living room, right? And I can feel the warmth and the love, and by the way, I think they are figuring out how to consummate with your computer. So, but the point is, you don't have that soul connection. So I think the fact I can feel your souls, and I am a hugger. I am a big hugger, but the fact I can still feel the warmth, I think if we focus on that part and the love and the connection with each other, all the layers of all the physical parts will trickle in eventually. But this part is so important. And I just thank you, Randa, for, sending an invite to join love. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. What else? What was there anything else that came out in the questions that you wanted to talk about, or that you wanted to address? You wanted to.
I think that one thing that comes out of this pandemic experience, at least for me, is, and I think for lots of us, is a much more of a sense of a worldwide community or humanness together. And I think that happened everywhere, or a lot of places. Used to think of us, in the United States or in the Western world. Now there's a much more sense of a worldwide, because people, we saw what was happening in different countries, and people were talking about, do you wear masks here? And, I got my mask from China, and, all this stuff. We've became a worldwide community. I think that's really important. And Mandy, you noticing the sense in this group, my friends that are Baha'i are all about worldwide connection. And I think that literally happened a little bit more with this pandemic because of it. And that's something to really build on, I think.
I agree.
The inspirations that followed her article.
Oh, I know.
I don't know if you read down all the way.
Yeah.
But one of them that particularly spoke to me was, one of my daughters had been talking recently, or somewhere I had come across recently a children's book that talks about a thread where a child is anxious to go to school, and maybe some of you know this one, and the mother talks about the invisible thread that is love, that carries, nobody else can see that, but I'm always tied to you by this invisible thread. And this William Stafford,
yeah,
there's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing, and you have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And I think that's an interesting thing to meditate on. What is our thread? What is it that's holding us together, weaving us together, keeping us together, stopping us from getting totally lost out there? And it just, I think it hit me because of the children's book, which I'm going to find and use. But, what is your thread?
Yeah. Ruth said it's the Holy Spirit. Paul?
Yeah. In A Hidden Wholeness, the introductory part of it is a parable. It is that farmers in the Midwest know to tie a rope between the house and the barn so that they can find their way back home. Because it is so easy to get lost in the whiteout. And our thread is our mutual bound togetherness. And without that, I think we're nearly lost. So people have, I think, have mentioned a couple of times that this pandemic has changed our viewpoint to some extent. I don't think we can rely just on ourselves. We have to see that without each other, we're lost.
Yeah. I agree. Anybody else have a thought on that? The thread? Susan?
I think what was important is when we moved after being in San Diego for over 30 years and raising our family there to start anew, it was probably easier for me having experienced that. But my thread was my church, and I started going to church before we moved. So we kind of knew the community. But as we moved, and I didn't feel as connected there. I mean, it was a Methodist church and I felt comfortable there. But they changed pastors, and by the time we moved here, we felt very much more connected just being in the community and being part of things. But that was so helpful for us to have a place to be.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you guys. You've been a real lifeline for me, among several other things in this pandemic. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Ruth, you're a lifeline.
Yes. Our Friday.
No,
group
we're
is
all
definitely-
drowning together.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to meet for our one-time discussion in August. We haven't decided on what we're going to move back to in September. No, we have not. Okay, so we're still in that process. And I can't remember what day in August we just said we were going to meet. Oh, it's the 20th, I think. Right? I think it's the 20th. Is it the 20th? Anybody remember? Or it's the 13th? Maybe it's the 13th. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look at
We'll send out an email.
Yeah,
once
I
we
can't
look at our
remember what day it is.
books.
Yeah,
Talking about Carol's time dislocation.
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
what day is it
It's gonna-
today?
Yeah, it will be the 13th or the 20th because I'm not here the other weeks. So maybe I said the 13th because I leave for Duke on the 21st. But anyway, and I don't know what we're going to send out. So, but I'll send out an email, and then between now and then we'll also start thinking about what we're going to do for September, and then we'll go back to every Friday.
And in case you are like Auntie Mame and believe we need a little Christmas, and we need it right now, on the 25th of July, we're going to be celebrating Christmas at San Diego.
Yeah.
The service will be a Christmas service.
Yeah, so it will be Christmas in July.
It will be explained to you.
Faith is preaching.
You really want to confuse me
I
time-wise.
really want to mess up the time. I'm really messing up the time frame.
Carol's like, what? It's December already?
John said, would you preach? And I thought, and then suddenly I went, oh, it's the 25th of December. Let's do Christmas.
Oh,
Well, it's 25th of July, but
And she's preaching in Murrieta this Sunday. So if anybody wants to make the journey up to Murrieta, she'll be
no, it's called virtual.
there. Do they do virtual?
No, I mean, I'm going there, but you don't have.
That's true. That's right. They do. They
That's the
okay. They offer
beauty of
virtual. There you
this.
go. They offer virtual. There you have it. There you have it.
Last week was La Habra, this week is Murrieta, next week is San Diego.
She is literally the itinerant pastor.
I
She
am a circuit rider at this point in my life.
She's a circuit rider. She is a circuit rider.
And by the way, it's not the same sermon.
She's doing different sermons. I'm like, just preach the same sermon.
The circuit riders did.
See? So that sounds good to me.
Many of them did. They just preached the same. So, all right,
All
guys.
right, everybody.
Blessings, grace.